Welcome to a special edition of the Christy Taylor Show. And let me tell you, I am so excited about our guest on today because I get a chance to go a little hip hop. Yes. And not just go hip hop. And I got to say, in honor of my episode today, I'm wearing one of the muralists from Memphis, and he does a lot of amazing art, which reminds me of hip hop graffiti and all of that good stuff. And let me tell you, you all invited to get in on today's conversation that I'm going to be having with our special guest. It's going to be Jessica and Robb Dalby, and they are the creators of Diggie A Hip Hop Progression. Now, Robert Dalby was born in New York, but was raised in Atlanta, Georgia. And after high school, he joined the military and served for 20 years. But all along, he wanted to do a podcast in hip hop music and culture. And on the 15th of April, 2020, he and his wife, Jessica, decided to start a video. But then the LLC was later established later that year, and the idea has just taken on a life of its own. It is definitely a life of ideas, passion, and vision. And I'm super excited to have on the show today this dynamic duo, Robb and Jess. Thank you all so much for being here on today. I hope I did you all justice wearing my tee today. I told you I'm really trying to, give you all that, hip hop vibe. Did I do okay?
Yeah, you did great. That's what's up. We appreciate it. We appreciate it. We represent Memphis, just like I represent Atlanta, Georgia. So yeah, same
all
thing.
Right, ATL. Now, there's a serious connection between Atlanta and Memphis, and so many different singers and artists, Jazzy Faye being one, the son of James Alexander of the legendary Barcades. So definitely I know that we will be touching all of those bases. But can we kind of go back? And first of all, thank you all for serving our country. I do want to acknowledge that. I really do. Now, with that being said, who is Jess and who is Robb? Meaning, where did you all come from, and how did you all connect in life and love?
Oh man, you want to take this one? What is our story?
Our story, well, I guess it goes way back. So we'll go 17 years back.
Yeah, we can do that.
Fort Lewis. I was stationed at Fort Lewis, Washington, and I met my husband, and we were best friends for 5 years. And then we became married, and here we are today.
Yeah, that's the short version.
That's the short version.
Short version. Yeah,
that's a real short. We met, we loved, we married. Okay, here we are.
Yeah,
I love it. Now, the love for hip hop. When did you both fall in love with hip hop?
Oh, good question. I fell in love with hip hop when I heard R&B Rakim, Paid in Full. When I heard that song, when I was probably about maybe 7 or 8 years old, and I was like, what is that? That sounds super cool, super catchy. And just since then, from the late mid 80s, and my dad, shout out to my dad if he's watching, playing Houdini tapes from back in the day and Run DMC. And that's really where it comes from, family. And it really just resonated with me when I was young, really, really young, me and my brother both. And once we heard the Houdini tapes, Fat Boys tapes, and L Cool J and Airbnb Rakim, that's when it really started to fall in love with hip hop at an early age.
Wow. I want you to know that you're all getting some love from Christopher. He's talking about that love story, so short and sweet, to the point. Yeah, that's Jessica.
All right, Jessica, much love, brother.
Okay. So Jessica, when did you fall in love with hip hop?
I'm born and raised in Brooklyn, New York. So it's honestly, it's almost just a part of who I am. So, sitting on the stoops in the projects, with your friends, and listening to Onyx, and listening to, LL, and listening to it was just everywhere. You couldn't get away from it. Even being Puerto Rican, the fact is that it is a part of our culture. So, and then just resonating. And like I said, for me, it was just a part of my identity. And that's how I fell in love with hip hop.
It's so funny because I think of the movie Brown Sugar. Yeah. And also, touches of it, of Love and Basketball.
Yep.
And even other movies and documentaries that I've seen, and hearing you all say that. And I had the joy of interviewing Jessica on my Let's Go Live on Instagram.
That's what's up.
And when she was telling and talking about being on the stoop, and I was like, girl, it's like a School Days movie. It's like a Spike Lee movie. It's just to know and hear someone talk about something that I viewed from another perspective, it just still amazes me. I just have to say that it still amazes me to have you all talk about something that you all came up in,
Yep.
and it was just a fabric of your lives. Now, I have to say that I'm a classic church girl. And yet I had my own brush with hip hop. And I think, you'll be surprised how you were raised. Yes, exactly. I would say that my connection to hip hop, even though I grew up I grew up DC born, but Millington. Okay, let me say it like this. I was DC born, but we were raised north of Memphis when I was a little girl. So we were in the 70s. So there was a strong influence for me when it came to music that was more contemporary than the traditional Southern sound. So the Hawkins and Andre Crouch. So, of course, there was James Cleveland, but Tremaine Hawkins was my favorite singer, and Andre Crouch.
Yeah.
So I had a very contemporary gospel upbringing. Clark Sisters in the 80s, so it was always the ones that was pushing the envelope. And then my brother, who is now deep in music, he pretty much broke the rules of listening to music that wasn't necessarily on the gospel playlist. And I believe it was because he was breaking those rules that I became aware of. And my sister, she was definitely listening to Isaac Hayes and Al Green when mom wasn't listening. But my brother really, being younger, start exposing us to, first of all, Prince, Kiss, and definitely hip hop. And I remember the Sugar Hill Gang.
Okay.
Rappers Delight. Yeah, I think that was my first memory of hip hop, and now I realize that was really a pivotal moment.
Yeah.
Is that correct? Like, what predated Sugar Hill Gang's Rappers Delight?
Probably right before that. That was like the biggest like hip hop like mainstream hit, and then before that it was just DJs playing in the park, in the Bronx, right where in Cedric Avenue was where hip hop was born. So pretty much it was just house parties, people getting together, playing music and getting together and dancing, and then it kind of just broke out of that with the Sugar Hill Gang, and then it just steamrolled. That was early 80s going into the mid 80s and then things like that. But the root of hip hop is definitely just those house parties and just DJs and battling back and forth. Like that was really the essence of it in the very beginning of the hip hop.
I remember, watching documentaries, like I said, because I'm a history buff. And so being able to have a conversation with you, Rob, is kind of like, I'm talking to a historian, a music historian. So I'm geeking out, okay? Just FYI. And I'm trying to figure out how deep of a nerd do I want to be today. But I also remember that one of the things that they talk about when you do more of the deeper study as well is how much of it was rooted in jazz, in griot, and in poetry, things that I loved. And I never knew like the bebop and how that influenced hip hop. And then when I saw this one documentary on Netflix recently, about a year ago, and they were showing literally when they would take a vinyl record, and I was like, just the creation of a new music form. I found that very fascinating because I'm, so when it comes to the creation, I'm trying to jump between the history of hip hop and then what you two are doing to preserve the culture. So, Rob, I'm gonna throw a couple things to you. What were some of the things once we got into the 80s? And I know based upon your podcast and your show and just the whole universe that you're creating, you're taking us through the decades.
Yeah.
Let's talk about the in short form, how hip hop has evolved and how you have sectioned it off as a historian.
Oh, wow. So in talking about, in order to tell the story of hip hop correctly, I wanted to put it together in kind of like sections of hip hop. So I couldn't go back to the 70s because I wasn't around that time. So I can't go that far back. So I can only talk about what I experienced, and I experienced was first introduced to hip hop in the 80s. So I thought that in order to tell the story of hip hop correctly, you have to start in the 80s. So, LL Cool J, Eric B. Rakim, Big Daddy Kane, Run DMC, all the pioneers, Salt-N-Pepa, all the pioneers that put this culture together. And starting with that first, and then I said, okay, well, we're going to start in this area, and then we're going to progress into the rest of the story of hip hop. So starting with the 80s to me is pivotal. It's extremely important to know all of the pioneers that lay down the foundation. NWA can be in that conversation as well, just seeing how hip hop changed and evolved. from partying and dancing to the street style that NWA brought. So it's just all the different kinds of ways that we listen to music. And you can say the same thing about, funk and jazz and all that evolved as well too. So with the hip hop elements of the native tongues with Tribe Called Quest and Jungle Brothers and Queen Latifah, with them bring the jazz elements as you talked about. So you have to talk, in order to talk about hip hop correctly, you have to start in the 70s and the 80s. I started with the 80s because that was when I was introduced into hip hop. So that's the reason why I chose that particular 10 years. And then we moved on from there.
Wow, something, every artist that for me to feel like I'm not a hip hop head, because I have some friends who are hip hop heads who are like yourself, who mapped it out. But every artist that you've talked about, I'm like, oh yeah, I love them too. I like that. Now, how deep into their catalogs do I go? I'm definitely probably a radio queen on that. Like, oh, I heard that on the radio. Like, oh, I love that from the radio. But I remember I was in high school, so that means that the time that you're telling me where it's being birthed, I was in high school. Yeah. I would graduate in 83. So I think I went to high school in 79. So my high school years would have been doing the formation of that here in Tennessee. So, wow. Okay. So LL Cool J, one of my favorites. Oh my God. Big Daddy Kane. I met him one time when I was doing radio and got an autograph. I hope I have it somewhere still with that signature fading. But let's talk about some of the artists that you feel like helped shape the structure of what we now have as the culture of hip hop, of those from the 80s. Because I know this is where it gets kind of deep, depending on how
this is where it gets deep. Yeah, right. Yeah. So I'm not going to name them all, but I can name at least 3. Definitely LL Cool J will be one.
I was going to say yes.
LL Cool J definitely will be one. MC Lyte, Queen Latifah, I'll put them in the mix for represent for the ladies, and Run DMC. To me, Run DMC. Without Run DMC, we don't get the crossover success, or hip hop artists crossing over into mainstream success. Like Run DMC is a blueprint of all the artists that are trying to cross over into mainstream success. They were the first ones to actually really do it well and execute it, and still stay true to the shell toes, the leather jackets, the hats, like they still kept it, Queens and everything. So to me, if I had to choose 3, it'd be those 3, and then kind of everybody else kind of circles around them. That's how
wow. And I loved all them. And as soon as you say Run DMC and that one song, Walk This Way, they merged, rock, because they looked at it like hip hop is rock music.
Yeah,
it's the levels on the fringes,
our culture. Absolutely.
Yeah, absolutely. Now, LL Cool J, how does he specifically assist in shaping the culture of hip hop? In opposition to, let's say, one of his peers like Big Daddy Kane.
Yeah, I think it's a contrast in styles. So Kane is just kind of a wordsmith. He's really witty, really punchline king. To me, he was like a young lion. And the reason why I admire LL Cool J so much is because of I forgot what the movie he was in. It wasn't Beat Street. It was I can't think of it now. Got me on the spot in front of everybody on live TV.
That's okay. That's all right. It's gonna come to you.
I can't think of the movie, but he was in a movie where he was like, when it was like the story of how Def Jam became to be. He just busts in the door. He's like, box, and he plays this song, I Can't Live Without My Radio. And it's like he just came in so braggadocio, so confident. And I remember that it was it's gonna come to me eventually, but just for him to be so confident and to show the culture of hip hop with him, and being so not really arrogant, but extremely just braggadocio. He was in shape, and then he got further along into his career, had brothers getting into the gym in the early 80s, you know what I mean? Yeah. Just showing up his body and just being really being a ladies' man, but being respected by his peers at the same time. Like, to me, like that was really what changed the culture into what it is. So yeah, and the King Teen Alcoholics and Pioneers as well too. Yeah, absolutely in that same time frame. But but to me, it's definitely Run DMC, LL Cool J, MC Lyte, Queen Latifah, and then to me everybody else circles around them. LL Cool J definitely is a one of the greatest of all time. Absolutely. Without
he's the hip hop Muhammad Ali. I mean,
absolutely
in every aspect of when you think about LL, he has all that Muhammad Ali embodied a decade or two before. And I'm thinking about how you saying, of course, we're talking about something that was already, the foundation had been laid a good decade,
Yep.
yet it was evolving to a art form that was pushing into mainstream, and not just crossover, but just in the consciousness of the mainstream, because it
Right.
had been underground for a long
Oh yeah.
time.
Oh yeah.
Now let's talk about the fact Def Jam. You introduced that he bust in. So Def Jam, how far back do they go for him to be able to enter that point?
Yeah,
How
so the story of Jeff Jam is kind of a weird one. So Run's older brother Russell Simmons,
correct?
and can't think of the other guy's name. It got me on the spot. I can't think of his name though. Rick Rubin. Him and Rick Rubin were college roommates, and they decided to start Jeff Jam out of their college their dormitory. So that's how the whole thing got started. Their first artist was Run DMC, Russell's brother and his boy DMC. And Jam Master Jay was one of the DJs around the way, and they started Def Jam literally from their dorm room in '82, I want to say. And then it was, I think, the King of Rock came out in '83, Rock Box, all the other the hits from there. And then they started making movies, and then they started to, Def Jam literally was the flagship of hip hop in the early '80s. Their second act was, the Beastie Boys, and then Slick Rick was on Def Jam. So I mean, all the greater pioneers were either there or on another label that had, Big Daddy Kane, BDP. They were on another label as well too. So yeah, it was definitely just the evolution. We didn't even know. We thought it was gonna be a fad. I remember talking about this, but when Jay-Z took his acceptance speech for the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame, and we all thought hip hop was gonna die off. We didn't know it was gonna last 40 years, into the future. We had no idea what we had, but just like you mentioned, keeping the culture alive, keeping it true, and here we are, 40 years plus later, we're still talking about hip hop music. It's just extraordinary.
One of the things about hip hop, because it did go past music, is that it is encompassing of so many parts of the art form, fashion included. You talked about,
Absolutely.
the fashion. Can we kind of talk about how fashion and dance and art, graffiti, all played into, and how did it merge? I mean, what was influencing which?
I say it's all. So when you talk about hip hop, it's a culture. So it's more or less, there's always, 5 elements of hip hop. You got the MC, the DJ, the B-boys, the dances, and then you have the graffiti. And then the other part is just the MCing. So the MCing is the other one. So those elements in itself are kind of intertwined. So you may have someone that's a great dancer but don't know how to do graffiti or art, or someone you may have a dope DJ MC combination but they can't break dance. So it's just all those things that kind of molded the culture. But we're talking the early 80s. This is watching it unfold in front of all of our eyes, for the world to see. And then it just started catching on. Curtis Blow is in that conversation also. Yes. So it's so many of pioneers that we need to thank that gave us hip hop, and the sacrifice of not making any money, just doing it literally just for the fun of just being around and having parties and dancing and doing things like that. So yeah,
Rob, as you're saying that, Rob, I'm thinking about Jessica sitting on the stoop. Take me back in time, Jessica. Come on, take me back in time, Jessica. I mean, you're witnessing the guy on the street breakdancing. I mean, do you all remember the first time y'all saw that?
I sure can. I definitely sure can. I even tried it myself. You know what I mean? I tried to break dance the windmill on a cardboard box. You know what I mean? Like I saw on TV. I wasn't very good at it, but that's a story for another day. But yeah, it was heavy influential. When I was in the South, I was in Atlanta, and just to see the stuff on TV, what they were doing in New York, like, oh wow, like that's really, really cool. So not only did it influence, like you mentioned, not just New York, but it was global. People in Japan are b-boying and overseas in UK, and it's literally took over the world. And we didn't know Priority and Def Jam. Yeah, Priority is definitely one, mainly on the West Coast there with some of the pioneers. Like I think Ice-T was on Priority and back in the day. So, it was definitely just something that just ideas, having fun. I don't think that the pioneers at that time knew that what they had. They didn't know what they had. And
I often think about that. Yeah, Ruthless Records and No Limit. Yeah, they were going head to head in the South. Yeah. I always think about that. To me, when you're I'm like Miles Davis and Coltrane. Did they know that they were creating blueprints? I don't think so. I just think you're so tapped into the source of your creativity, you're just pulling it in. Prince now, it's like Michael Jackson, Quincy Jones. It's like, do you know? Of course, now people try to force themselves to get in the zone and manufacture greatness. Yeah, but I think when you're first getting started, you don't know. You just tapped in. You just tapped into it all. Now, just he brought up Queen Latifah and MC Light. Talk about the influence of women in hip hop in the early years, and we're gonna kind of step into a little bit of the future in a minute. But how important was it for you? Because you're out there on that stoop in Brooklyn, witnessing it. And when do the girls get involved? When do they step in?
It's funny. I was listening to Robb, talk about breakdancing and everything. So, what you see is not what I was then. I was the girl with the Timberland boots on, or the sneakers, with the hair in a ponytail, doing the battling back and forth with other females dancing. So, for me, that's how I remember it for me. And back in that time, you had MC Light. So I had the baggy pants. I have pictures to this day somewhere in my box, with the baggy pants and just, wearing the Timbs. So, I mean, in that area doing that, it's funny looking back now.
So when did the female MCs, because we're talking, because you could have a female graffiti artist, as you say, breakdancing, all the different, pillars of hip hop. But when did the female MC, because female MCs and the DJs, I don't really remember who was the precursors to MC Light or Queen Latifah or Salt and Pepper. Who came before them?
Oh, it's a bunch.
Wow.
It's a bunch. It's a bunch.
Yeah,
they don't get enough. They don't get Roxanne Shante, the real Roxanne. There was another one. You got me on the spot. I should have had my little book here ready to go. I was getting quiz today.
I told you I was gonna be nosy. I told you.
No, it's all good. It's all good. But really, the one I remember the most is Roxanne Shante, because she was the youngest. She was like 14 years old and just rhyming and rapping over, recipes of Biz Markie. He was actually doing beats for her, beatboxing live. And she was so young. She was like 14 years old. And I was like, wow, really, really impressed with Roxanne Shante. She would probably be the godmother of the female MC when it comes to just the foundation of it. Who came before, the MC Lights and the Queen Latifahs and the Salt and Peppers and some other ones that we may have known at that particular time, and Moni Love as well too. So all those later in the 80s, the females started to come more prominent. But yeah, there was definitely some trendsetters even before that could rhyme too. Not could just get on the mic and say ABC 1 2 3. They really got some stuff to say. So it was really good to see how that foundation started to just going into that particular part of hip hop into the 90s and 2000s and so on and so forth.
Now, who was Silky Fine?
Silky Fine, I want to say, if I remember correctly, is a West Coast artist. Yeah, West Coast legend. Yeah. I was gonna say, I think she's from the West Coast, but and then Stetsasonic is not Stetsasonic. I'm trying to think of who sang Supersonic. JJ Fad is also in that as well too. So it's just a lot of just seeing how ladies had to find their own way, because it's such a male-dominated genre, and they had something.
Queen Latifah, definitely MC Light had her, but Queen Latifah, to me, she brought in the most dominant energy when it came to a female MC. Absolutely. And her, as you said, I'm a documentary needs to be told, because she came with such strong matriarchal lyrics.
Yeah.
For me not to be a hip hop head, I really am knowing more than I think I do. But I love, because it's like her look and all that, and when she dipping into the fact about the jazz infusion into her sound and some other ones like that, because when she did her song album years later, and she was Dana, and had a really strong jazz infusion into her music.
Absolutely.
Let's rewind it back to one of my favorites. Of course, LL Cool J. Yes, the ladies love Cool J. But there were some other rappers, and this is going to probably move us more into the second phase when we start shifting in hip hop. But my favorite, other than LL Cool J and me knowing Sugar Hill Gang, Rapper's Delight, when I tell y'all my guilty pleasures was Heavy D and Will Smith. Honey, I dated somebody that looked like Heavy D. I liked him so much. I learned his real name. I like Heavy D. And the thing is I tend to have a strong fascination for Big Daddy Kane type of brothers. But Heavy D. Heavy D. Let's talk about Heavy D and that whole era that started moving into, more from, it was still wordplay, but it was different. It was a different form of wordplay.
No, I agree. And that's the reason why we call it the second season The Shift, which talks exactly to what you're talking about. With Heavy D and the whole Money Earning Mount Vernon crew, with Heavy D and the boys and Pete Rock and CL Smooth and all the artists that came out of Money on Mount Vernon, New York. It was like a movement, with all together. And rest in peace to Heavy D first and foremost.
Amen.
So we definitely want to make sure we recognize Heavy D and his contributions to the culture. But it's just it was definitely a shift and the shift in the sound, the shift in how we looked at hip hop. Hip hop was now being more commercialized, and to your point. We're out watching videos now. We're getting the music video box, and we're on MTV and we're on BET, and and those, at least I remember the video music box. You know what I mean? So,
yeah, I do too. I do. Yes. You had to be on music box before you can get on VH1.
Yeah, right. It was like a rite of passage.
It was like everybody was on music box. If you want, it's like
everybody was on the box, man.
Yeah, it's like those playlists they have today, emerging artists. It's like everybody. And I think, to your point, hip hop started becoming more artistic because also during that time, dance music, everybody dance, that kind of music,
house
was
music,
really big. So to compete, I think we were still talking street, but you had to have a more aesthetically pleasing music video.
Right,
to keep the eye, because everything, all those flashing lights and stuff, and the dancers, and speaking of dancing, but we're gonna stick on Will Smith and Heavy D before we get to MC Hammer. But
yeah, we did an episode on Hammer. I can't wait to talk about him in a second. But yeah, Will Smith doesn't get enough credit. I really do think that. He was definitely a trendsetter. He was one of the first rappers to cross over into TV with the Fresh Prince of Bel-Air. And he doesn't get enough credit. He doesn't get enough respect from hip hop, which is ironically sad in my eyes. But I mean, for him to be nominated for, an Oscar coming up this weekend, for his humble beginnings to where he is now, it's just crazy, crazy story. To see him transcend and start from hip hop, and then, everybody loves the movie House Party, and Will Smith was supposed to be casted for House Party. He turned it down. He always says, "Oh man, like I should have played that part," So they offer him House Party. He did one at a time because Will Smith was more kind of a squeaky clean kind of a rapper, and Jazzy Jeff as well too, as a producer and DJ cutting, scratching, and mixing. So absolutely, Chris, I definitely.
And I think that's one reason why I was able to listen to Heavy D and Will Smith, because remember, my brother was the one breaking the rules,
right.
Listening to everything, and but they were palatable. For the average person, middle America, church going people, like, it's just good music. Summertime, everybody enjoys summertime. God made the summer. But so I really, really like that. Now, of course, I know I don't want to skip over any phases, but what really happens after that particular shift? What else? Who else causes the shift?
So the cause of the shift, to me, in my eyes, is Death Row Records. Once you get to about 92, that's when the West Coast really, really started to shift the culture of hip hop. And with the Chronic, with Doggy Style, with Snoop Dogg, when Death Row got involved in hip hop, there was a huge shift in the culture of hip hop. And the West Coast really has something to say as well too. And definitely had a big part of that. So definitely shout out to CWK, who was a big West Coast guy. I know he's listening to them right now, probably jumping up and down. So yeah, I would say that the huge shift in music in hip hop in the early 90s was Death Row Records. Without
something. Talking about not getting enough credit, he said, I remember getting mouth washed out for the fresh home by my mama and learned it was, and I learned it from Will Smith. Oh, okay. Now, here's an elementary question. Why was hip hop born in the East Coast?
Oh, that's a good question. I don't know the roots of it, but I want to say with DJ Kool Herc is the godfather of hip hop. Yeah. He was from the Bronx, and then it was, him, Africa Bambaataa, and that is, I'm talking way before my time now, Christine. So I don't know much about. I wasn't around. I was
a little child then. I
wasn't around all that. But let the story say that DJ Kool Herc started doing outside shows and DJing and mixing and just having parties. It was just parties. People out having a good time. The speakers is out. Just playing music, and then it just kind of resonated from there. And then that's kind of like when the battle rapper started, coming in, where Busy B thought he was better, and he would try to battle everybody, and that was like where that whole competition kind of came in. The machismo kind of style was like, yeah, I'm the best. No one can beat me, and I'm the best DJ. I'm the best lyricist. So it all really started with that, but. From there, I would say the roots go all the way back to the motherland, to Africa, with beats and drums and all that. So it starts from there, and then we watched it evolve. And we could talk about that all day, where how it's kind of resonated from the James Brown with the sampling and all of the pioneers, the 70s R&B music and everything like that. So the funk, absolutely. All started from funk. Yeah, it all started from that really, and as you mentioned, just taking records and scratching them and mixing them up and doing all these kinds of things you're not supposed to do with vinyl.
I know, it's like, boy, you scratching my record up.
All things you're not supposed to do with vinyls, and it just created its own style, So yeah. So like I said, but this is all long before me. But yeah, definitely DJ.
But one reason why I bring that up is because sometimes you have to have the perfect storm or the perfect situation for something to be birthed out of it. Yeah. And I always wonder, is like, why East Coast? What? Because the hood stories, the street story, the oppression was happening all around the country and the world, in every hood, ghetto, whatever they were, inner city. And I always but we were all having those we were all being pressed.
Right.
You know what I'm saying? We were all in a pressure cooker as people of color in this country. And I'm like, well, what possibly? But I hear you saying, and maybe, this is just me hypothesizing. Maybe because on the East Coast, it was more a concentrated population of Black people and people of color, brown people. Where everywhere else, I think we don't live on top of each other. You see what I'm saying? Mm-hmm. And I just always, I'm being nerdy. I'm just being nerdy, y'all.
No, you hit it on the head. You legitimately hit it on the head. Yeah. And I firmly believe that. Just coming from New York, living, seeing it myself. It's just, you're so heavily populated. It's like, that's who you are, next door, everyone. So firmly, and the block parties that still consist to this day.
Yep. Yes. Oh, you all can really have block parties because our blocks are like, hey, down the road. Yeah. Even in the West Coast, I mean, there's still space.
Right.
And you have to make a concentrated effort to come together.
Absolutely.
Yeah, so I've always wanted to ask that question. So now we West Coast, East Coast, Tupac, Diggie. Even though Tupac was East Coast born and ended up, in that, where are we, I'm trying hip hop, they said was done in the roaring 30s. Yeah, of course. Oh yeah. From the bebop age and things, and it stemmed from people of color in New York at a speakeasy.
Oh, okay. Well, that might be it. I mean, there may be some theories behind that, but I know, Kool Herc has a lot to say about that too. So yeah, I think we just leave it with Kool Herc, and he birthed hip hop, and we can just take the story from there. But I do understand
Yeah.
what CWK is trying to tell us, though.
You know something, and one of the things, because I'm a poet,
Yeah.
so I always have a understanding of and the drum is very important to just people of the African diaspora, period, with a T, period. The drum. But I think the percussion in our voice and the way we just speak, I mean, you can go to anywhere in the world where people of color and we have a rhythm to the way we speak.
Yep.
And just normal conversations. And I know you know what I'm talking about, Jessica, as well. It's like we just have a rhythm in the way we tell our stories. I mean, who was walking down the street and who took somebody's man, and who, you know, even if we talking at a funeral, it's a story, it's imagery. So it's really beautiful to see how a music form and a culture came out of that in a way that was speaking to oppression. And I think the lack of exploding, and maybe we can kind of embody this too, the social justice piece that's always been a part of hip hop. It was probably maybe to keep us from losing our god dang on mind. Yeah. Absolutely. Okay, so where do you want to pick up? Because I done jumped us all the way back to Africa, to the West Coast, back to the East Coast, to the South.
You stop with Biggie and Pac, you know, rest in peace to both of them. Just tragedy. I mean, those young men were 24, 25 years old when we lost Big and Pac. And I could just, I think about that, and I think about, you know, our kids, you know, around that age now, and just to think about, you know, the how young they were, how talented they were, and such a big hole they left in hip hop. And we kind of didn't really know where to go from there. 96, 97, around that time when we lost Big and Pac, you know, 6 months from each other, hip hop was kind of like in a spiral. We didn't really know, okay, what's gonna happen? Like, who's gonna be the voice of hip hop, you know, in those late 90s? And there were some other MCs that really picked it up and carried the torch and kept it moving. Jay-Z being one of them. And then, you know, of course, we had Snoop Dogg and Dr. Dre. Yeah, go ahead.
Jay-Z came on the scene what year?
Jay-Z dropped Reasonable Doubt in 1996, but before that, he was actually doing back shows with Kane. He actually learned his rhyme from Big Daddy Kane, touring with him. So he gives Big Daddy Kane the credit with him. And then he got together with Jazzo, and they had a little small little thing. But then he got with Dame and Big and formed Rockefeller, and then you know that kind of like got the story from there. But yeah, I mean, someone had to be the torch carrier for hip hop.
But there was so much fear. There was so much fear. Yeah, but there was so much fear at that time for about 2 or 3 years, even though I was not deep in it, you know, the news and all like that. And even the way it was impacting political people, including the congresswoman who was advocating for what she saw on the horizon, how hip hop was going to be prostituted by the industry. And she was trying to avoid that. And then, of course, the infamous Sister Souljah and Bill Clinton. Can we talk about my girl, Sister Souljah?
Give it up one time. Give it up one time.
I was a church girl who I bought Sister Souljah's book and album. Yes, I did. I listened to it real quietly, but eventually my mom she said, what's she saying? Because the truth she was saying, she said, but she's telling the truth, but does she gotta cuss so much? But can we talk about Sister Souljah and how now hip hop is truly impacting not just culture, but political culture?
Ooh, we can talk about that all day. I would probably go back before Sister Souljah and talk about Public Enemy. And the reason why I bring that up is because Chuck D is a mastermind on how he was able to fuse, you know, music and sound and talk about all these political injustices that were going on with Black and brown people. He was talking about that in the late 80s. And then, you know, just to kind of give Sister Souljah the courage to do what she did. Can't go without someone else laying the blueprint down. And I think Public Enemy was also another Def Jam artist too. So, but without Public Enemy, we don't get the socio-political kind of rap that we're getting now. So I definitely want to get that out first and foremost. But yeah, Sister Souljah, you know, she wasn't, and her being a Black female, she wanted her voice to be heard. She had a lot to say. And I think that it was great for her to bring her story to the forefront and just talk about, hey, look, just can you listen? Hey, this is us. We got something to talk about over here. You know, things are going on that you want to pay attention to. But But yeah, it's definitely a resonating story, and she's just an incredible artist, to go.
Yeah, she is, and it was juxtaposed against a lot of female MCs who were going for the sexy at the time too. And then she came back out and like, whoa, took us back to like when Queen Latifah first came out with those heavy messages. But it fit, and it laid the groundwork for, I think, a lot of, you're from Atlanta. I'm living in Memphis. It started pushing people to say, oh, there's more way to do hip hop, not just East and West Coast styling.
Right.
In my opinion, it because I think there was a holy grail to hip hop, and a lot of people, if you didn't sound like Curtis Blow, or if you didn't sound like, but then I think people started playing with the art form. Am I in the right neighborhood on that?
No, yeah, just get right on. And I completely skipped over, the mid 90s, there with Outkast, with Outkast being one of the first big Southern hip hop artists from Atlanta, and Andre 3000 gets on the stage and said, the South got something to say. That's all I got to say. And that particular statement should be somewhere like, Christine, like somewhere at a hip hop museum or something like that. I don't know. But without that statement, I mean, that put Memphis on, that puts, Atlanta on, Alabama, Montgomery, Mississippi, all the Texas, all the other different styles of hip hop, going into the South. I mean, we're talking about Memphis, 8 Ball and MJG.
Come on now.
We're talking about some legends here. 3-6 Mafia. I mean, just all of the Tennessee sound in itself.
Country Black.
I mean, all the Country Black. I mean, all the greats from Memphis, from the South, and we also had a voice too. So we had our own style, we had our own way of looking at the world, and we have a voice too. So
it was, thank God, Memphis and Atlanta, but so many people from Memphis moved to Atlanta, so we actually say we created Atlanta sound.
Well, I think New York got something to say about that too. There's a lot of people from New York that moved to Atlanta. Yeah.
Well, and it's interesting that you said that, because I had a joy of talking to. There's a new movie coming out called Juking that's going to be on Stars, and it's about the dance form that came out of the gangster movement Memphis created and all like that, the bucking and all that, and it's called Juking. And the young man was talking about how actually the guy who created a song for Juking, how much of the New York sound was infused with. Oh my God, I cannot think of the young man's name. DJ who created there's a Memphis hi-hat sound that they did on top of the New York sound that actually blends in. So Memphis actually we are definitely infused a lot of the New York into us. Put some Southern molasses and biscuits on it with some grits. Honey, what? And eggs. and they say we slowed New York's rhythm down and went on a different beat. Where I think you all were 2 and 4, and he broke it down to the 1 and 3. I said he had me in music. He had me in music harmony class.
1, 2, 3. 1, 2, 3. I listened to that whole interview, and I'm like, yes.
We didn't slow it down, but I mean, it's all about a contrast in styles. But yeah, the South has something to say, and
South has something to say, and they said, and they still saying it. Somebody, okay, I got to go back to, we were talking about Sister Soldier, and Christopher did bring out the pack. How that laid the foundation for Eve.
Yeah.
It was so many strong women emerging at that time that were either the conscious rapper or the super sexy rapper or the girl around the way girl. It really began to say anybody who has something to say, including what Andre 2000 said, everybody got something to say now.
Yeah.
And we're going to say it in a way that speaks to my pushing against whatever the status quo or the restrictions are. Now, okay, I know we can't talk all night, but I want to make sure we bounce around and hit the high points, because this is the kind of stuff that you talk about all the time on your show. So I'm going to throw it at you like this. Who wants to take over how you all came up with this amazing show idea? And not just the show, but the whole universe that you're creating.
Okay, it's twofold. So I had an idea about doing a hip hop podcast a long time ago. Just didn't know Well, I knew well, first off, I'm not an artist myself. I get that asked like a lot myself. Were you an artist? Were you ever in the industry? No, I'm just a fan. I'm straight up.
Jessica was out there
Everybody watching.
breakdancing though.
I've never been an artist. I've never been an A&R. I'm just a fan of the music. That's I'm gonna get it out there first and foremost. But I have a passion for hip hop, so I just wanted to start something to, one, just to get out there and get my voice heard, and I didn't know how to do it. Wrote some ideas on a piece of paper that we're probably gonna put in a frame one day, put it on the wall, because that's how it all started, on a piece of paper, just ideas. I was writing some things down, and then it kind of resonated from there. And Jessica was like, "Okay, go buy the equipment." Bought the equipment, and then we started out like in the first season with the '80s, and I got a chance to meet LL Cool J on IG Live. That's on our YouTube channel, so that's the first thing you see is me talking to LL Cool J on IG Live. Which was really, really cool. And then from there, once we actually got it kind of off the ground a little bit, Jessica was the one that saw the business side of it. So I'll pass it over to her so she can talk about how the business formed, how we got a legit business, and then, kind of going into it from there. So,
I mean, exactly what he said. I still have those papers. They're in sheet protectors. I keep them because, it's something I always go back and look at, because that's what it was. Just ideas on a piece of paper. And then I take my phone out and I'm like, which mic do you like?
Yeah.
That's exactly what it does. Like, which mic do you like? He's like, huh? I was like, yeah, let's go. Let's just do it. So then he started to do it. And I just started seeing more like, what was going on at the time, in society.
Yeah.
And I just said, music is a universal language.
Yeah.
Hip hop is a culture.
Yeah.
I said, this is about inclusivity and unity. Let's establish a business. So he played with business names, and I was like, the progression of hip hop. And he was like, okay, I like it.
Yeah.
And so, I established the business, led him to continue with his, how he structured everything and eras. We always would talk about that. But for me, I just saw it bigger. I saw it as, not only do we have a platform, but we're blessed with a voice. Yeah. And with everything that was going on, so much turmoil, so much divisiveness, so much,
the pandemic. Yeah, like it's, everything going on.
It was just so much going on. I wanted to say we had a platform that people could just come to and get away from the crazy.
Yeah.
And just talk about hip hop. And just, and pay homage to the greats. And basically that's how I saw it. And I told him, it's like, oh, I really don't want it to be a business. I was like, no, this needs to be a business. I said,
why did you feel it was important, Jess? Because a lot of people who are podcasters don't elevate it to an LLC. And why do you feel like what you're doing and what Robb is doing needs to be incorporated in real terms? What were you seeing?
Well, I'll be very honest. At the very beginning, I already saw the future. I saw what he was doing. Mm-hmm. I saw that he was putting together a Netflix documentary.
Yeah.
Hip hop history at its best. Yeah. And at the same token, educating the artists of today to know you don't have something without something. So these people laid this here for you. You can't go out there and say, I'm the best at this. No, there is many for. Yeah. So, incorporating it as an LLC wasn't just because, we have a podcast. It was because I saw what was happening and I saw bigger. I saw more than YouTube. I saw more than all the streaming platforms. I see broadcast media. I see this being put into documentary film because this is exactly what Robb is doing. He is depicting hip hop history and the progression as it emerges and as it fuses. And that I like to take LL Cool J, because LL Cool J is doing that with Rock the Bells, taking the old with the new. Mm-hmm. And that is something that I look at that and I'm just blown away, because I love that. And I feel that that's in our own specific way, we're doing that as well.
You know, this is at a good time because there's also the emergence of the museum.
Yes, there is.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
The
Let's
Universal
talk
Hip
about that.
Hop Museum.
I think it's great. I think that it's important. I really do think that hip hop should have its own Hall of Fame. I would love to be an advocate for that. You know how they have the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame and such and such Hall of Fame. Hip hop should have its own. But I don't know who's gonna. That might be 10 years down the road from now. So who knows what that will look like. But I think it's one of the things that I will say is, you know, I think the museum is great. It shows the story, the progression of hip hop, and hopefully it gets all the artifacts of maybe some of the bigger concerts from the 80s and the 90s and all the big ones that we had, the showcasing our culture, our talent, you know, that we own and we want to showcase to the world. So I think it's great, groundbreaking. Even I would even say I think it's great.
I think it is too, and I think, you know, I know that you are one of many who see the need to curate hip hop history. So who's to say that some of the shows and podcasts that you're doing and interviews will one day be in that very museum, because you will be capturing living legends and those who have studied this art form and this culture, and you're documenting it now. So hats off to you and to all those who are out here in the trenches and out here on these internet streets, you know,
right?
Having these conversations. Shout out to LL Cool J and Rock the Bell.
Absolutely.
And to all the newbies who are like, I do want to know the history. Are you starting to see, and Jessica, you can talk about this, because I know that part of what you've done as well is you're not just doing the historical stuff, you're talking to people who are right now creating art under the umbrella of hip hop. So can you talk about the other things you're doing that partners with this?
Oh, okay. So yeah, so we do. So for me, as I said, like I saw Big, and as he was saying the story, I'm also looking at everything from the business end, and I'm seeing these artists, and I'm looking at them, and I'm like, it's pandemic, it's COVID. How are they sustaining? They can't perform. They can't this. Well, let's provide this for them. Let's provide a platform for independent artists to get interviewed. If they have a single come out, you know, let's give that at a reasonable cost, because they're independent artists, you know, but provide them the quality. So that's how I saw that. And I felt like, as we're telling the story, it's only right to provide that lane to the artists and the creators that are doing it right now as well. Why close that door? Open it. Open another one for them.
Yep.
You know, the progression of hip hop. I mean, so you're really creating something that celebrates the past while helping to support the artists who are continuing in the vein of hip hop and preparing the future. So I really like the essence of what you're doing, because it is eternal. You know what I'm saying? It does have that lasting impact. You know, one of the things that I wanted to kind of jump to was outside of the history and outside of, I'll just say, the current artist support, that there is the other parts like the fashion, the art. How do those things play into what you're doing with the progression of hip hop?
So to be honest, not so much. However, we just strictly talked about the music side of it. So not necessarily with the graffiti or the art or the breakdance. I don't think we had anybody come on the show on breakdance yet. But we didn't really talk about that in the very beginning, but we're not something that we're not opposed to. I think it would be great to, you know, talk to some of the pioneers in both of those eras, whether it was a graffiti artist, you know, that did things in the culture in that regard. So we just really stuck with the music part of it. But yeah, I think that those other elements are also just as important as everything else. But in regards to what we do, we just focus on just the music itself.
You know,
that's where I incorporated Push Entertainment.
Understand. Because that is part of the progression. And I see Christopher's like, let's do a progression of hip hop.
Let's do it, man. We'll be on that panel. Right. Let's do it.
Now, you're from Atlanta and you're currently residing in what city?
Outside of Kansas City, yes.
Okay. Now, because you all come from New York, you got a strong Atlanta upbringing, so that's deep South. where does Kansas City and just that whole Kansas and Missouri? Okay, Ludacris, Nelly, but Luda, how are they faring in what's happening now in the second decade? Well, really the third decade of the 21st century.
Yeah. So here in the Midwest, now mind you, we're not from the Midwest. I can only speak to you from experience. So
Correct.
I want nobody to cut my head off and that listen, right? But what I will say is they have carved their own lane in hip hop. So the Midwest includes, Chicago, Detroit. So we got Eminem, you got Twista, you got Bone Thugs and Harmony. I mean, there's so much talent. UGK, not UGK, MGK also is killing it right now. On the hip hop. Then he made a rock album. So there's so much talent in hip hop wise in the Midwest. It is insane. Shout out to Tech Nine here, who's definitely the foundation for hip hop artists in Kansas City. So shout out to the big homie for that for sure. But it's a lot of influence in the Midwest for sure. And it has its own style kind of too. We have the South and the Southern drawl and the Midwest with the chopper style where they rap really, really fast and like you can't really tell what they're saying, but it's their style, it's their take on their art form. So and I always use the analogy of hip art as a painting because it's really just the same thing as what a painter does, but it's in their mind they put it on words over a beat. It's no different than what a painter does, painting up a portrait or pictures. No different. It's just art. It's art.
We talked about East Coast, East, West, South, Midwest. That Southwest, we cannot end this conversation with at least talking about Master P. And Cash Money Millionaires.
Yeah. Oh yeah. Shout out to Louisiana, New Orleans for sure. Yeah. I mean, I think that I think what's fascinating about both of those stories that it kind of came out around the same time, kind of parallel. With No Limit and Cash Money, but they were all about just being an entrepreneurial side, like owning your own record label, like owning your masters. Like nobody really thought about those kinds of things. But everybody was like, I want to be a rapper, I want to get a deal, I want to get a video out or a single out. But they were like, no, wait. We're gonna create our own and keep everything in-house. And there wasn't a lot of labels that were doing it, not from the South. I mean, we're talking about the South at that time, who was barely getting notoriety as it is, being, legitimized in hip hop. And here we are, we got two major labels in the same city,
right?
Taking ownership of, it's all about ownership. And that's why I love the mind of Master P, love the mind of Baby from Cash Money to say, look, we our footprint in here too. We're going to own our own. We're going to do our way. And there's genius in that. There really is. There's a lot of genius in that. So huge
was there ever any controversy when they started doing that? Because I was, of course, I'm in commercial radio, and there's difficulty playing hip hop of any until you reach a certain point. But was there controversy when they started pushing that?
I would not between the two labels. Not that I'm aware of.
Just within the culture of them pushing that way, because even in Hollywood, we all want a deal. We want to be legitimized by the industry. And when you go independent, I know even now there's still some pushback when you say you're an independent filmmaker.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. So was there pushback at that time when Master P, particularly because he was like No Limit? He literally is known as the man who sold his record out of the trunk of the car.
Yeah. Yeah, definitely had the hustle spirit. And I think that, going independent. Yeah, you're right. I mean, he probably caught a lot of flack about, is this hip hop? What is this? You guys are not part of the hip hop story. And P did not get a lot of credit, from what he did for hip hop for a very, very long time. I just want to get that out there. That Master P really didn't get a lot of the recognition that he deserved until later on, until other people started to do some of the same things, everybody wanted their own No Limit in a sense, but he was one of the first ones. Him and Baby from Cash Money really started to get black ownership of record labels and doing it their way. And now we're seeing a whole lot of them, of everybody of doing it, and it's great. It's great to see that we're finally figuring out the business side of it. doing ownership and doing it their way and getting distribution deals and all that stuff. So yeah, it's understanding the business side of it is a big part of it, and they understood it early. Now, mind you, I don't understand the business part of it because I just like the podcast.
And that's where Jessica comes in.
Jessica comes in. Yeah.
So you have your own Master P and
right.
I mean, to me,
No doubt.
To me, the era today, I understand the artist. I want the big deal. But if we really want to get into the nitty gritty, when you sign with an independent label, if you do the research, there's a lot of these independent labels are distributing through your bigger labels.
Yes.
So to me, being an independent artist, you are just as successful if you were signed legitimately to Sony or Empire, because that's the business side. That is what a lot of people kind of oversee. They're just like, I want that big deal. I want that big paycheck. I want that. But what you have to see or try and learn at least is these independent labels. There are many independent labels that are being distributed through major labels.
And you have a larger opportunity to have, as you say, more of a control of the music that you create.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, more of a voice. Yeah.
Now, Jessica and Robb, because we're kind of like giving a synopsis of what you all are doing with progression of hip hop, Diggie A, all the podcasts.
Yeah.
How can people really support what you're doing? I know that we have the website that's available, DiggieA2.com, and Instagram. But if someone who I want to either be on the show or I want to learn more about how to contribute to the curating hip hop, the progression of hip hop, or I need your services. I mean, what can they expect when it comes to supporting you?
It's twofold. So I'll talk about the podcast side. I'll let Jessica talk about the other side of it. So with the seasons, we pretty much will take any walk of life, and I really wholeheartedly want to make sure we reiterate that, because when we got started, it was literally just friends and buddies from the Army. So a huge shout out to Will Boyd and Frank Ketchum. I know that they're probably not watching right now, but if it wasn't for those two gentlemen, this would not be where it is. Like we had to start from somewhere. And without those two gentlemen, they were on a lot of our shows early on when it was kind of starting out, and we really didn't have a lot of folks of buckets of people to pull on, and one of people are camera shy or didn't really know much about who we were talking about. So without those two gentlemen, I definitely gotta give credit to them both for setting us up for where we are now. And then kind of go from there. Like when it comes to the seasons, I decided to put seasons together to talk about the major artists that contributed to hip hop story. So that's where it starts there. And then once we get further along, if you want to be a part of the show now, there's a form that we would do every season. We'll do a show to kick off the season. So like a little video on YouTube. There's on the bottom of it is a form you'll fill out, and you kind of put on there which guest you want to be on, which artist you want to talk about, and bring your notes and come ready to rock and roll, because I'm gonna bring mine and I'm always prepared. So yeah, it's a lot of fun, Christine. So it's not like it's all jazz up. I'm drinking Hennessy every show. It's very relaxed, and because it's all about having fun and educating at the same time. So yeah, that's the podcast side of things. And of course, Jessica can talk about how we support independent artists, and then how we also interviewing major players in the culture also.
Wow. Yeah, I did catch one of your interviews with out of Texas.
Yeah, Lil Kiki. Yeah. Shout out to Lil Kiki for sure.
Lil Kiki, yeah.
Shout out to Lil Kiki. So, yeah, it was great interviewing him.
That was a great interview. But I mean, to the testament of what Robb said, when it comes to the seasons, you fill that form out. We do it because, like I said, I like to show inclusivity and unity. Yep. So we take all walks of life. Of course, I make sure everything is a good fit, but as well as, everything meshes well. Yeah. So in addition to that, independent artists, I am a big proponent of a person that believes in quality over quantity. Right. So if you are out there, if you're doing stuff and everybody's always trying to do a press run, everybody's always, trying to get interviewed, And of course, platforms charge, but do your research. Make sure it's the right platform for you. So that's what we do. We offer interviews at reasonable rates, but all different tiers. You can have a video and audio, website. So it's like marketing, it's interview, and I like to be able to explain that so I can break it down and they understand that you're not just getting an interview, you're getting exposure, you're getting marketing, you're getting quality because there's work that goes into post-production that Robb puts in it. He listens to their entire catalog. So it's, extensive. In addition to P.U.S.H Entertainment, that is there to help even entrepreneurs. If you don't know how to start an LLC, if you need that consultation, that's what I'm here for. That's what we're here for. So it's culminating also the fashion. It's culminating also the artists. It's also going to be bringing the Midwest back to the map, because for me, and yes, I will put that out there, it is time that the Midwest here where I am gets the recognition that it needs.
So much talent here.
There is so much talent.
Yeah, there's a lot of talent here. Yeah, I will say that.
I am absolutely blown away. So for me, my purpose, my passion is to continue what we're doing, but before 2022 is out, to put the Midwest on the map. Wow. We are no longer underground. Take that money that you have and have people come here.
Wow, that's powerful. Because that's actually for over 10 years. Because the talent drain is real throughout the South and the Midwest. Yeah. So I definitely know that there was a lot of effort. So I applaud you all now and encourage you now that a lot of work went back into putting Memphis hip hop back on the map, and of course, Yo Gotti, and rest in peace to Dolph, and to others, many others. And one of the beautiful things about Memphis now, that the infrastructure is now being built, and we are getting more community support from public, private sectors to support the music. But it was a long haul. I had to come back from Detroit in the early 90s, and it's just now paying off in the last 5 to 10 years. Yeah. So just know that the work can be done, but you have a lot of people now to kind of pattern after and see how do they go after with the music commissions and how to really get policymakers, because a lot of it needs to be both public and private sector.
Yes.
Because like one of the things that happened here, because we have over 6 decades of musicianship, from every genre, but how do you retire a musician? Putting those type of things in place so that even those who are hip hop artists, but they can now benefit just like a blues artist or a jazz artist or a gospel artist or a soul and R&B artist, because there's been so much music. So I want to applaud you all and encourage you all today. Jessica and I had long conversations after our interview, but definitely there's so many opportunities that, and hopefully we can make a bridge between what you're doing there and get you plugged into some of the things we did right and wrong to support musicians of all genres, but in this case, hip hop.
Absolutely.
Any last words that you want to make sure that we say and direct to our audience before we wrap this amazing hour? We did an hour, y'all.
30 minutes. An hour, man.
Wow. I know.
Already.
I was looking, I said, is that 49 minutes? Yeah, so we've hit our hour, but I want to make sure before we wrap that you speak to the main things you want to make sure we leave with the audience.
Oh man, I'll let the lady go first. I'll clean up.
Okay. First and foremost, I want to say thank you to you for no question, giving this opportunity for both of us to come on and be able to everyone see really what it is. It's not just the host. It's not just no. It's a team. We balance each other out. We make it work. So I want to say thank you to you. I want to say thank you to Leslie. Shout out to our PR. She's phenomenal. But what I would love to say is we are going to continue what we're doing, but we're going to be elevating it. And I like to echo what you stated. I went to the Chamber of Commerce today because you're right. It does take private. It does take getting out there. Mm-hmm. And so that is what I did. I went out there and I went to the Chamber of Commerce, very well prepared, business plan in hand, spoke to them. And all I can say for that is to stay on the lookout because, yes, the Midwest will be coming on the map. And anything to fuse with Memphis as well. Like I said in our last interview, it resonated with me when Nelly said, no one put a stamp on my name. This is for the Midwest. This is for St. Louis. Wow. So somebody needs to take that on, and I'm down for the challenge.
Wow. I don't know how to come behind that, but it's a hard act to follow. But Christine, thank you. First off, just thank you for this opportunity for us to get our voice out there. Thank you for everyone that's watching or tuning in right now. Thank you all for taking time out of your busy schedules on a Friday evening. I know everybody's ready to start the weekends. It's been blunt. It's been blunt. So I'm with you all. Definitely shout out to Christopher Kleiss who's on here. Who's tuning in. Just a good wholesome brother. Just always got our back from when we first started. And I want to just leave the audience with when it comes to hip hop music, hip hop culture. For us Black and brown people, it's our culture. I just want to make sure we reiterate that it's our culture. We're the gatekeepers of the culture. We preserve the culture. So I want to make sure that it doesn't get lost in translation when we're trying to, whether it's downplay one another or we're supposed to lift each other up. Make sure you pick up that person that is struggling, doesn't know how to do EPK, doesn't know how to establish an LLC. Help we take the time and reach out and build each other up. And the other thing I want to make sure that we reiterate on our platform is to keep continuing to drum the social injustices that are going on within the United States. We cannot lose momentum on that. We're getting ready to hopefully, get to another justice on the bench right now. A Black female is up right now for the bench, and hopefully she gets through, and we'll have another piece of us representation on there. So it's more than just music. To your point, Christine, it's more than just music and culture. It's all of us that are in this this bubble. It just so happened to be that hip hop music was the voice or the catalyst that gets the word out of what's going on. So but to be no different than, like I mentioned, TV shows or a picture or anything like that. It's all art at the end of the day. So everybody has their own interpretation of what that art looks like and how it's progressed over the years. And we're just glad to be a part of it. And just as Jess mentioned, we are not going to stop. So we're going to keep going. Thank you, J Bone. Thank you, thank you, J Bone. Appreciate that, man. But that's all I got, Christine. Thank you so much. We really love letting us have a voice on the show.
Well, this has been a delight. As I said, I was nerding out, and I appreciate you satisfying that. And really, really grateful that you all have done the work and are doing the work. And shout out to you both. And Jessica, thank you for saying I need to bring Robb on.
Yes.
This has been a delight. Well, everybody, once again, be sure to share this with a friend. This is, of course, going to be archived on both Facebook and YouTube. You can go to my YouTube channel, Christy Taylor Online. Also, check us out, of course, our website, Diggie, Diggie A-2, the number 2.com. And to find out everything they have going on. And be sure to check out their interviews, their podcast. If you need their services, support these people. They love hip hop, and the proof is in the pudding. The proof is in the pudding. I had to put a little Southern on there. The proof is in the pudding.
All right.
Let's see if it's that good banana pudding. That's all I'm saying. Thank you all so much. Have a great weekend. And
appreciate it.
It's a wrap.